Managing storage is a really big challenge in this day and age. We look at the announcement just yesterday or today about the expandable storage coming to the Sony PlayStation 5. It's ridiculously expensive, it's difficult to install, there are so many issues with storage, but new AAA games really need that fast NVMe super fast SSD storage. So I want to talk today about managing your storage on the Steam Deck. Now, depending on which version you choose, there are three very different options for storage, not only for the size available for the storage, but also the speed at which that storage can be accessed. And that's really an issue. Rich at Review Tech USA has been working on an experiment where he's going to be loading some AAA games onto an SSD card and then trying to play those games on a gaming laptop just to get some kind of an idea of how games are going to play off an SD card in your Steam Deck. I'm interested to see how that experiment works out. We see on the Nintendo Switch that games do play pretty well off an SD card, and Steam themselves, Valve, have actually come out and said that in most of their testing, most of the games that they have tested have worked pretty well off an SD card, but I have my doubts. There is a reason why the Sony PS5 and the Microsoft Series X and Series S both have high-speed NVMe hard drives in them. Well, not hard drives, SSD drives in them. The reason is these games have such a high bandwidth of information flowing back and forth, between the hard drive and your screen, for example, in the game, there's so much bandwidth of information passing back and forth, and it needs to be able to pass really quickly. So the Steam Deck, at least the two higher models of the Steam Deck, have the same sort of setup. The base model, the one you can get for $400 US, has a base, they call it an MMC storage, which is basically like, a small SSD style chip. Similar to what the Nintendo Switch actually has. Not really fast storage at all by any means, but faster than an SD card. So you've got that 64 gigs built in, and then you can add an SD card. Okay, fine, let's set that to the side for a minute. Let's look at the second option, the one that's another $100 or so more expensive, the middle option. That has a 256 gig SSD, NVMe SSD in it. 256 gigs is not too bad. For example, it depends on the types of games that you are going to install and play. I have a 256 gig SD card in my Nintendo Switch, and I've got tons and tons of games, like 50 plus digital games installed on that with room to spare. And I'm not just talking small games. I've got stuff like Borderlands 1 and 2 and NBA 2K21 or 2K20, I guess it is, like pretty large games, 15, 20 gigs in some cases. So, 256 gigs is not bad, depending on the style of games that you choose. But if you wanted to play something particularly modern, like Call of Duty Warzone, ixnay on the Activision, but, let's say you wanted to play Call of Duty Warzone. That game is over 200 gigabytes fully installed with all the patches and everything like that at this point in time. You would barely have room for one game on the 256 gigabyte model. So then that SD card slot really starts to be important, and we need to figure out how we're going to use the two different types of storage to get the best result. So the top model has a 512 gigabyte NVMe SSD, the Steam Deck we're talking about. So with that 512 gig, you have a little bit more headroom, but let's think of the other consoles out there right now. The PS5 has a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD in it, of which about 850 odd gigs is usable for game storage. So, and people are absolutely screaming that they need more storage, and as I said at the beginning of the video, they just released some expandable storage from Seagate for that, and it's going to be pretty expensive, but you know, people are still, I guess, happy to at least have the option, because even 850 gigs is not enough to have more than just a small handful of big AAA titles on your device. So the 512 gig is also a little bit faster. The 512 gig Steam Deck, I mean, is a little bit faster storage than the 256, and it has a couple other nicer options as well too that really make it worth that big boy money, to be honest. But let's take a look and break it down and come up with a strategy here. Now, you could install 1 or 2 or 3 maybe big AAA games on the 512 gig SSD, play them, delete them, and move on. The nice thing about that Steam library is obviously you can re-download it and replay it anytime you want, although even with pretty fast internet, downloading something like a 200 gig file is still going to be time consuming, to say the least, and you're not really going to be able to just jump in and out of games and delete things. So you need to come up with a strategy for what kinds of games you have in your Steam library and where you're going to put them. So let's assume that you have, for right now, one of the 2 top models of Steam Deck with a little bit of fast storage at your disposal. You're going to want to pick your highest performing games and have them installed to that, and then take your SD card slot and you want to install things like indie games, you know, your Hades and your Guacameles and your Cave Stories and things like that. Retro games like the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters are going to run pretty smooth even off the SD card. You're really going to have to prioritize what you put where, and you know, in terms of anything long term. See, this is a portable device, and the main item, you know, with a portable device, that you really want to be able to take a selection of your games with you. Having 1 or 2 big games on this thing and nothing else is kind of prohibitive, especially if those big games are internet dependent, like you know, multiplayer games, the likes of a Destiny 2 or, you know, something like that, that is, you know, internet dependent. If you're out on the go, you may not have access to internet, so you need a library of games that you can play on vacation, on the beach, wherever you want to take this thing. So you're gonna need to have an SD card in this thing, even if you have the biggest hard drive option. Now, looking down to the lowest hard drive option, the 64 gig, your management is going to be much more important. You're definitely going to want to get your hands on at least a 512 gig SD card, and your options, I think, are going to be somewhat limited as to what kind of games you can play, because I honestly don't think Call of Duty Warzone, again, Ixnay to Activision, but I don't think that game is going to play very well off an SD card. The read-write speeds are just not fast enough off an SD card to handle, I don't think. We'll see what Rich at ReviewTech's you know, review on the SD card games are, but I think at this point you're going to be looking at last-gen games, things that you know, would likely run on the Switch, would then probably run fine off an SD card. You know, games like maybe the Borderlands from the PS3, the remastered Borderlands games, they'll probably run fine on an SD card, but I think when you get into something really new and bleeding edge, I think if you don't have one of the top 2 models of Steam Deck, you're kind of going to be screwed. Now, apparently, it's not supposed to be user serviceable, but there are expansion slots on all 3 models where you will be able to install, or theoretically install, an M2 NVMe expansion card at some point. But again, it's not supposed to be user serviceable. It's not necessarily going to be easy to get into. If you follow SpawnWave, the SpawnWave channel, he does a series called TechWave, where he breaks down all the new devices that he gets, takes them all apart, and he is planning on breaking down his Steam Deck as soon as he gets it, and letting us know what he thinks as to how hard or easy it will be to expand the storage in the Steam Deck. So keep your eyes on the SpawnWave channel as we get closer to December, because that'll be an interesting video to check out once he gets his. Anyways, guys, food for thought here. We're really gonna have to figure out, I think, those retro games, those older games, the kind of 7th generation PS3 sort of games that are available on Steam. I think those are going to run fine off an SD card, but by all means, keep this in mind. Rich at Review Tech is right. All 3 of the storage options are insufficient, really, and I think Valve had to make some trade-offs in order to get these price points where they needed to be. I think if the top model had a 1 terabyte hard drive in it, it probably would have been approaching $1,000, at which point I think it would have been prohibitive to a lot of people, even at the, well, maybe not $1,000 US, but for us here in Canada, the top model is $819 Canadian, which is definitely more than I've spent on any console in my life, although when you compare it to a gaming PC of similar specs, it's really a pretty good value. So, I don't know, guys, let me know what you think. What are you going to do with your storage setup on the Steam Deck? Will you just install a game, play it, and delete it, or are you the type of person that likes to have hundreds of games at your fingertips ready to go? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. I put out all kinds of Steam Deck content now because it's what I'm super excited about, super passionate about going forward into the new year. I can't wait to get my Steam Deck, and there will definitely be more content on the Steam Deck. I'm working on another video right now about 10 PS Vita games that you can play on the Steam Deck. And don't forget about the Beeps and Bloops podcast. We record that live every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's available on Twitch live at twitch.tv/Canadian Cafe. That is Kaz's Twitch channel. And then the video is uploaded to all major podcast platforms: Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're all over the place. That goes up Wednesday mornings, and then Thursday afternoons the podcast lands on my second channel, NerdCrave Plus. Go check out NerdCrave Plus. There's a bunch of other stuff on that channel. And hit the subscribe and the like button. You can catch up on old episodes of the Beeps and Bloops podcast. Episode 7 will be this Tuesday night, so don't miss out on that. Come join us on Twitch and interact with us. Anyways, guys, thanks for stopping by. Stay classy.